Welcome to the dYdX Ecosystem Briefing Series. And this is basically a series where we explore the people, ideas, and the innovations shaping the future of dYdX. In this episode, we are joined by a couple of validators. We've got Jerome from Kingnodes and Eric from Rhino, who have been selected as designated proposers. Designated proposers are basically a new governance controlled system designed to make the dYdX user experience faster, fairer, and more reliable. We'll unpack what this change means in practice, how it works, and why these upgrades matter. But before we begin, maybe you can give us a quick intro, Eric and Jerome. Who are you? Who are you with? What do you do? And then, we'll dive right in.
My name's Jerome. I'm the director of Kingnodes. We are a Web3 infrastructure provider. Our role with dYdX is that we have been a validator with dYdX since the genesis of the chain. And during that time, we've also been providing other services to dYdX grants and now dYdX Foundation. So we support the dYdX trade front end with RPC services, as well as dYdX traders with RPC services. We have a bunch of associated services that we also provide, which is like archive node snapshots for people to download so they can do their tax. We have publicly available archive RPC, statesync snapshots, and more recently, now we've also joined the dYdX designated proposer set as a designated proposer with an associated SLA. So we've been around with the chain ever since they started their test nets. Believe Eric has as well, and we've done a lot of work to sort of optimize everything that we do with the chain, from whether it's an RPC call all the way through to proposing blocks for the chain. I think we're pretty good at it by now, and happy to have been chosen for the responsibility for the designated proposer set.
And hey, everybody, my name's Eric. I'm from Rhino. I'm a partner there. Our background is pretty similar to Jerome's. Actually, my background is we've been in the enterprise infrastructure space for 25 years, or a little bit more than that, actually. We started getting involved in Web3 in 2020. And like Jerome, got involved early with dYdX. We joined the Genesis set. Actually, we joined after Genesis as a validator, and then kind of went in and out of the set a couple of times based on just growth. And then we were in strong, and we were also selected for the designated proposer set. We've done really well in terms of signing percentage and just performance with dYdX, and actually all chains. But actually, it's one of the few chains where that performance has really been highlighted, and there's actually functionality that's built off of execution. Many times, frankly, in proof of stake systems, that doesn't really work out to your advantage, or that doesn't work to your advantage, but it's not really recognized as the way it has been. And I think it's great that dYdX is actually building competitive advantage around that, which is really good for us, and it's really nice to be able to be a part of that. So we work on a lot of different L1 and L2s, from everything from within Tendermint space, also through EVM and move ecosystems, things like Chainlink and other types of areas as well. So thanks for having us here, Winnie.
Thanks for all your contributions to dYdX. So, for those who are new to the concept, could you explain in plain terms what a designated proposer even means with dYdX in mind?
Designated proposer set is a set of 8 validators who perform the duty of building blocks and proposing them to the rest of the network. The remaining validators on the network have the ability to vote on the blocks, on the validity of the transactions that are included in the block. As designated proposers, we build and propose the blocks in a round robin distribution, which is different to the way that blocks are usually proposed, which is an algorithmic stake weighted distribution. So the more stake that a validator has, usually the more blocks that they propose on an ongoing basis. So in this new architecture, there's just 8 validators, and it's a round robin proposal order. And I believe that the foundation tried to select validators from all over the set of existing validators, not necessarily depending on how much stake they had. They've got people from the bottom and the top and in the middle. So the role is designed so that the validators are selected by governance. So my note didn't make sense there, but the role is basically designed so that validators can be selected to enter the set based on their performance on chain, as well as from a number of metrics. And likewise, you can also be removed by governance if you're not performing as required for that particular role. Some of the metrics around what the proposers were chosen on was their historical performance on the chain, which is a bit of an indicator of the attention they're paying, the investment in hardware they make, the optimizations that they make, as well as monitoring and response. So I think most of the validators probably all of the validators that have been selected for the proposer set are usually ones that you'll find are highly responsive.
Just add a little bit more color on why and the performance of it. I think when in a regular validator set, when blocks are proposed based on the voting power of that, obviously that like Jerome said, that's algorithmic and it kind of based on how much voting power you have. That's maybe how many times that you propose a block. There's really nothing special about proposing. Everybody still has to sign it. Everybody still has to agree. The consensus mechanism doesn't really change. What can happen, however, is that you have slower nodes, or you might have nodes that are, whether that's speed of light because they are not closer to the set, or maybe it's that they're using lower based hardware, or maybe that's just it's overloaded or something else like that, or it could be a lot of different things on why. If it takes longer for them to propose, then it takes longer for us to sign it, and it basically slows the block times down. It just makes everything much slower. Or maybe they're down, and which means they might still be selected for that block, but there's a timeout period where it says, "Are you going to do this? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do this?" And it just waits until that timeout happens, and it goes to the next proposer. And so what you end up having is, even if you have 66.6% of the set available to vote that the block is good, you might still be waiting a long time for someone to actually propose. And it really isn't consistent. So if you say, like on the dYdX terms, we're trading based off block time, so we want that sub-second block time. Well, maybe it goes to a validator that is not very performant. They're lower in the set, or not even, it could be higher in the set, but not very performant. And we're waiting 2 seconds for that to time out. Well, there goes our trading algorithm. Like we can't do this anymore, right? So now with just a, and this is really what Jerome said, but now that based on that round robin situation, you still have the same risk. Like you still have that same risk of one of those 8 might be down, or you might have a timeout. But we're working, I think in that set there's a pretty high SLA associated to that. I think we've all like increased hardware, and we've done a bunch of other types of things to make it more resilient than even what it was. And even if there's other nodes that are down or are slow, they might not be important to be able to get to the actual signature of that block. And so once it's proposed and we get signatures, meaning we get past 67% of that, we're able to move forward. And so what we've seen over time is that block time come down, which is good. You see less timeouts. You see just more consistency. There is a centralization in that, in terms of, hey, we're bringing on the number of proposers, but proposers, assuming we have a fair structure within those 8 and they're being monitored and those types of things, it doesn't change the fact that we still have to have a large percentage of individual node operators validating that this is the mempool and this is the transactions that are in the block. So it's a weird thing, because it kind of seems like, oh, we're centralizing how this is going to work, but you're really not. You're not really centralizing how the mempool happens, or what transactions are in there. You're just trying to ensure that when the next block is ready to be built, there's somebody available right then that's close, that's reliable, that can do that in a very short period of time.
So everyone still needs to build a block.
Mm-hmm.
Just the proposer has to basically build it and get it out there, but everyone else still has to build it and then agree. But I guess part of the thesis behind it is that if you're throwing experience and hardware and know-how at it, that you can get those initial block built really fast so it can propagate to the rest of the network. Again, like Rhino said, we only need 67% to agree. So if there's slower nodes that can't get there in time, then that's not really a big problem. But we still need 67% to agree. So it's not just 8 validators that are doing all the work and they're agreeing on all of the blocks themselves. Everyone else is still involved.
Wow, you guys just answered most of the questions that we had planned to ask. I was planning on challenging you on decentralization, and Eric, you've tackled that. I was planning on asking you guys to compare and contrast between like the regular validators and the designated proposers. You've answered that. So I guess we'll move on to another question. And this is on the operational requirements side. I would imagine that there's standards that you have to meet to stay within this set. Do you care to share what those standards are within whatever you can disclose? And what happens if, let's say, a designated proposer underperforms?
I don't think there's anything stopping us from sharing what is in the SLA, because there's just a bunch of numbers which probably won't really mean too much to most people anyway.
It's a lot of nines.
Yeah, it's a lot of nines in it. So, to those who know, the uptime requirement is 3 nines, which is 99.9%, which means that we can miss 0.1% of the blocks in a 21-day period that it's measured over. So it's about 3 weeks, or it is 3 weeks. The other percentage-based SLA there is that we need to propose 99.99, so 4/9% of our, I call it allocated blocks, but the blocks that we're supposed to propose. Missing those is no bueno. Some other things that we can't do or shouldn't do is have consecutive 30 minutes of downtime. We should have less than 100 milliseconds of latency between other proposers and the order entry gateway services nodes. We need to have robust key management, fast response to alerts, validator node redundancy, and peering with the OEGS nodes, the order entry gateway services nodes. There are some other like suggested requirements which we all meet, but they're not hard requirements. So that is the basic principle behind what we need to provide in order to be, for lack of a better word, compliant with what is expected from a designated proposer.
It's also a little bit nice because when we reduce that set, like for instance, we started monitoring all proposers, we can at least see like if they're missing, and we can kind of see what the structure is. So there's a smaller group to be able to review with. You're not really looking at, I mean, we're looking at chain health, but you can also really look at proposer health, which makes us a little bit more responsive. There's a group that we can ping people again if that's required. I think everybody has stepped up, and everybody has good monitoring because the reason they're in this set, but it's also easier to really see if there's an issue and what that issue is. It's a lot easier to faster to find that. That's not really SLA based, but it just allows us to be a lot more responsive to that. It's also increased our relationship with the dYdX operations team. Like we're, just to be able to providing them access to, our emergency pager duties and other types of things. If they see issues that might not be us, just, related to us, or just on the chain overall. So that's also been really nice pieces of our SLA in terms of like having time to get like how long it takes us to get back to them if there's an issue. Like we're trying to get that down to minutes, if that's even in the middle of the night. So that's also been really good to kind of formalize and put that into a agreement.
It was nice to see the other day, Eric, that when there was an issue with the chain during that outage, that the first to show up were designated proposers.
Yeah, right. Everything was going off.
Yeah, Eric and I were sipping tea in the lunchroom waiting for everyone else to show up.
It's why you're proposers. Mega, do you have any questions? I feel like I've been doing a lot of the asking.
Yeah, no worries. I have this question because designated proposers were launched basically hand in hand with order entry gateway service. So if for the people who aren't very familiar with it, basically this is launched to reduce latency and ensure fairness in order inclusion. From your operational perspective, like what are the anticipated benefits for these two systems to go hand in hand for dYdX?
You sort of touched on it there, Mega, but I don't think it's sort of clear enough probably to most people. But at the moment, if you're an API trader or a high frequency trader, a lot of those guys put money into running their own nodes with order streaming directly into the P2P layer. That can cause like a little bit of unfairness for smaller operations and traders. So I think the overall purpose of the OEGS system is to improve latency of orders getting filled for all users, as well as providing an entry for smaller players so that they're not sort of at a disadvantage to firms with more money to throw at the situation. I guess you could think of it similar to how in stock trading, everyone wants to get closer and closer and closer to the Wall Street trading floor with their computers so that they can get in first with micro trades to sort of trade on, what's the word, Eric? The spread, trade spreads.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think to improve fairness, and I think to that end, a good system and implementing it in a way that it is hand in hand with the designated proposer set ensures that it's probably the lowest latency entry into the network as well, which probably may even give, I think it evens the playing field because it's probably more performant than what people can provide themselves by spending a lot of money on big servers. So
Yeah, and it's not really replacing anything, right? It's additive, meaning like if those other traders are out there, they can still run their own nodes, they can still do whatever, they can, all those things still exist. But this is allowing a dedicated API RPC system that has really a extremely network close aspect to the proposer set, which means as those blocks are built and as the mempool gets created, there's a good chance that it's not how much that really helps. Like when you start, if you try to do some analytics, it'd be tough to define, but like from a percentage perspective, but it definitely streamlines and creates a pipeline that's right there. Meaning like I'm submitting transactions to nodes that are peered privately to these proposers. So we know that they're all seeing this proposed transaction at the same time. And that's really what the benefit is there. So what we talked about before in terms of having proposers all over the world, there might be a sub-second delay for a proposer to see a transaction because it's on the other side of the world or some other situation like that. But here going through OEGS, like that like when I submit that, it has a direct pipeline to each of these proposers, which has been, I mean, it seems like it's working.
So, Mega, I have a question for you as well. As governance lead, what would you say the role of the dYdX community is in selecting and rotating designated proposers? And how are incentives aligned for the proposers, the validators, stakers, and whatnot?
I would say that I think the other validators have mentioned before that the dYdX community basically have to appoint the proposer set via governance. But to like walk back a little bit from that step is actually like when the dYdX trading has launched this, like the designated proposer, basically governance control proposer set. Me as the governance lead, I was actually contacting the MEV committee to like start creating the RFP process, which, so any validator in the active set can apply based on like the selected requirements. And because MEV committee is a highly technical committee that is also like, appointed by governance, they were the ones who were like recommending which validators that could be appointed through governance, basically. And then these proposer sets are also like receiving some incentives from grants. So they're receiving this to fulfill their SLA, to make sure that they have like the correct hardware and everything. For the stakers and traders, I would say like for stakers, definitely like if their validators are not being jailed, if their validators are constantly proposing blocks and like, doing well for the network, then they will still receive the rewards. And for the traders, definitely like their trades will go faster with the reduced block time. But I would, give the floor to Eric and Jerome as well to comment if they see anything that I have missed so far.
I think what Mega said is entirely correct. Like the one piece would be that there needs to be obviously the it's tough to monitor these things at scale. So it's easy. I think validators do that. Obviously, foundation and like operations does that, right? And to be able to watch these types of things from a community perspective, it's difficult. And there are some dashboards available, and you can see some stuff related to that. But it's easy to look at it maybe in a short window. So tools that are out there might have the last 8,000 blocks or just like kind of the component. But if you want to look at it to say, hey, how is this group doing over the last 12 months? That's difficult unless you're monitoring on your own. I think there really needs to be from an MEV community and things like that, like being able to show that data associated to that and say, here's why we think that this proposer is doing well or not doing well. And even, stuff happens. Like, we just had massive outages 2 weeks ago to AWS. It was in the US East. If that would have been in AP North, it might have been a challenge for teams, really, because there's a lot of teams that might use AWS either as a signer or maybe as nodes and other types of things. There's people rely on that. And so you might have a huge, dip for a period of time, or we had, a massive Azure outage yesterday. That might affect teams and those types of things, but those are all short term, right? Like we're building here for 10 years, right? So we want to be able to take a look at that over a period of time. So I think from a community perspective, it's tough to look at it from a short period and make any decisions, but I do think that we are watching it from a long-term perspective. And I think that there are clearly incentives in place to be able to keep that high SLA, both from us individually and as well as within the proposer set. Like when we see things, I know Jerome has this, like we call out teams right away. Like, hey, this is like, we saw that this was a, some aspect of missed blocks or other types of things. Like there's accountability for sure. When it comes to these types of things, I think it's also healthy that this group not necessarily rotate just to rotate, but rotate based off performance. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, we're midway from a voting power perspective in the set. It doesn't matter how much VP you have. It really doesn't, right? It's really a performance based type of item, which has been really nice. I think that it's a good, healthy model. Tools are in place to be able to both monitor performance across that set as well as and have a process for removal or replacement.
Piggybacking on your comment, how often do you think a rotation should happen?
I would say if they're outside of the SLA for months, then that would be an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think that it should be like on a clock. I think it should be that if they're not meeting their obligations, they start to have a look at a replacement. I mean, it's entirely possible that, someone's not meeting their obligations, but then no one else is able to replace them as well. So when you look at the moment across the set, or at least when I've been keeping an eye on the last couple of days, there's not a lot of nodes outside of the designated proposers that are maintaining a very good uptime or signed block percentage. So there's probably, a handful outside of the designated proposers, and definitely the lowest miss nodes are all designated proposers last I looked. I don't know whether that's because there's a designated proposer set that it's a double-edged sword, and maybe people feel like they don't need to have that type of performance now. The network definitely does need them to have that type of performance, because as we said earlier, 67% still need to sign the block. So the faster they can do it, the faster we can move on to the next block. So it's very important that people sort of don't take their hands off the wheel and keep working towards, making sure that they've got the highest uptime possible. Going back to the question you had for Mega on the incentives, I just wanted to mention that the economics for validators haven't changed at all at the moment. All that's changed is that they're no longer required to be, they can't and aren't required to propose blocks, but the economic alignment and incentives haven't changed in terms of block rewards and the rewards that are distributed from trading fees. So none of that's changed for now. However, I will be mentioning later on in some of the other questions about that.
So I guess the TLDR is not much has changed, and whatever has changed is just with the goal of improving the user experience for traders.
The whole purpose is to improve the user experience and trader experience, I guess, if you want to be more specific.
I should probably not say not much has changed, because on the infrastructure side, things have...
Well, economically speaking, not much has changed for, incentives and alignment, but definitely there has been protocol changes to improve that user experience. And that is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, for decentralized exchanges and perp platforms and the like, is that when a user presses that button, what is supposed to happen happens. Because when you're competing with a centralized exchange, and that when you press that button, everything's going to happen instantaneously because it's all happening in a database in AWS, you want a similar experience. So I think that a lot of work has been done, and that we're getting closer and closer to that experience of a centralized exchange. So
quite related to that, you both have shared like quite a few feedback, but if you could share one of the most important area in your opinion for improvement from an infrastructure or governance standpoint? Like, what would you say would be?
From my perspective, and this is sort of in an ideal a rose-colored glasses scenario, it would be great if we could achieve in the future some better geographical diversification. At the moment, the meat and gravy of the network is all centered around Tokyo, which doesn't have a great track record for things like earthquakes. In the future, sort of as there's improvements to the P2P layer and the protocol, hopefully we can get to a stage where we can achieve a similar user experience, but also start to spread the network out into those other parts of Asia that are near Japan, around Asia Pacific, if not over to the Americas and Europe as well. That's a rose-colored glasses type thing, just because of the whole latency issues of doing that. But yeah, that's what I would like to see.
Just to follow up on that, I think from a proposer set perspective, we've also, I know Jerome and I have, and I think others have as well. We've tried to do as much as we can to both meet the SLA and try to reduce that risk. So I know, like, we have nodes outside. We have some nodes out in Southeast Asia, and we've tried to do work to say, hey, if there was a network issue in this location, are we still signing? Whether or not the chain might still be moving, because they're like Jerome said, there is a high concentration, so we still might not get 67%, but at least, hey, we're there. We're still viable and those types of things. So there is some risk in that, and there is some centralization around a specific region. But again, we try to pick services based on different providers and totally different network structures, with different routes and other types of things, to try to do as much as we can to reduce the amount of reliance on some specific fiber or some specific data center or some specific region.
I know that both of us work quite hard to locate providers that we can use for provider diversification. It's a harder task than it sounds like in Tokyo, just because of even server availability is quite difficult there, just because of how high of a demand there is for that location and how power constrained the data centers are. And then when you try to introduce some further diversification out geographically, you still have the problem of your signers and stuff like that. If they're sort of optimized around that Tokyo area, then are they even going to be available if there's a regional issue to be able to sign externally? And then if you try to move your signers away from that area, so they're still sort of close, but far enough away that they may not be affected, and still be able to sign with those outer nodes, the redundant nodes, you start to affect your ability to sign all of the blocks as well. So then you start to affect your uptime. So it's a big balancing act of trying to make sure that you're sort of getting diversification in supplier and geography, as well as meeting the expected SLA requirements.
I guess the final question is just around what excites you about the evolution of dYdX? What are you looking forward to the most? What are you dreading, if you're dreading?
So I think that there are a couple of things that the foundation and labs are starting to try and work on, which could be interesting in the future. I mean, dYdX Foundation and labs are constantly innovating and trying to adapt to sort of changing market conditions and new competition, such as Hyperliquid and Jupyter. Something that I believe is coming up in the future is maybe changing economics for token holders to try and improve the overall value for the token holders by getting the token price to go back up. I saw some commentary the other day from, it might have even been Charles or Josh maybe, but they were talking about how you value companies in a business environment or a traditional stock environment, which is a unique thing about dYdX, that you can actually do some of that economic assessment because your returns are actually paid in US dollars. So it makes them a little bit easier to equate. You're not sort of using a fictional value or conversion that you may or may not be able to achieve. So what they were saying was that they feel like the price earnings ratio at the moment is quite low in terms of traditional returns that you would see from companies, and that it could be a good opportunity to buy back tokens by diverting all of the token rewards to the buyback program. The argument would be that you're basically getting a good entry price because of the depressed token price at the moment. So I'd be interested to see what governance and the forum have to say about that, because when you're doing that, you're also then taking away the rewards from stakers. So you're saying that you're trying to increase value one way by taking it away from another way, and also you then have the problem of that you take away the income that validators were getting. So I believe that they were sort of talking about just having, for lack of a better word, a stipend for validators to cover expenses while they're sort of running that program. But that's something that could be coming up. I guess we talked a little bit earlier. I'd like to see some more information on the Solana spot market. So I'm going to be looking more into that as well. Just things around governance and innovation and sort of constant evolution of the chain.
So just to piggyback on the comment you made about the buybacks, under the arrangement that you described, would you be happy with that direction being the one that governance takes?
Ultimately, that decision is something that would have to be made by token holders, like large token holders, or small token holders have a say in it as well. But it really is dependent on so many factors, and even the individual tax jurisdictions can have an impact on individual token holders for that type of thing, because you're exchanging an income then for a capital gain, if it all works out as it's supposed to. I couldn't really say, because the way it affects a validator is you're either getting income from one thing or income from another thing. It doesn't affect our economics too much. It's more of an effect on the token holders themselves. So it's tomatoes and potatoes for us.
Cool. How about you, Eric? What are you excited about? What are you dreading?
I'm just excited that, I mean, dYdX has gone through these iterations, right? From the EVM Ethereum market, now obviously over to Tendermint here, and then now with this designated proposer. Like that evolution, I mean, we invest in teams, not necessarily products, if that makes sense. And this team continues to evolve, and they take very planful long-term steps. That's really exciting. So I was just actually, while Jerome was talking, I was looking at like block times over this period, and like when we went from from dedicated to not, and like, or from not to dedicated, and where I think right now looks like lately we're at about 600 milliseconds, or something similar to that, and actually getting into the fives here, which is really exciting. And I think like even with OEGS, with the API services, and now with this, like it just opens up all these doors, right? So I know that the trading leagues pilot starts like coming up, right? November or something like that. I think that it's great to bring new eyeballs into dYdX, and have people now, work with these tool sets that are very different than they were even like 6 months ago, right? And that evolution you don't really see in like too much in the sex in the exchange aspect of things. And I think it's just great to like continue to try to get new people to be able to use the platform, and I think people who are long-term users just see that continued improvement, right? So I think that's really cool. And those numbers are going up. I think like it's really being honed. And so I'm excited to see kind of what other types of tools come out there.
I want to see what their next platform is. They've got the iPhone, and then they've got the Telegram. Where are we going next? Is it going to be on my fridge tomorrow?
And speaking of that, like here in the US, the World Series is going on. You guys are watching that all, but so I've been looking at just like the predictions piece, and just looking at this Dodgers win token and watching that thing drop, as the Toronto Blue Jays are kind of doing their work in LA. So that's really been interesting to watch, and like playing a little role in that and things like that. So I think just the product expansion is really interesting. The future of just more people coming on the platform, and it's ready. So and I think it just keeps getting better and better.
Before we get to the end and sign off, I would like to actually just mention one more thing, and it's sort of continues on from what Eric was talking about. I'm not sure if he read the same thing that I read as well. I could be completely wrong here, so correct me if I'm wrong. But I think I read in the overview of the last analyst call that now that the environment has sort of eased a little bit in terms of hostility from the United States, that there might be an entry into that market as well, or at least opening it up to that market, or stop blocking that market, which would be huge for dYdX as well, in terms of a customer base. So that is pretty exciting.
Yeah, you're not hallucinating. That was in the call. They will be entering the US with the Solana spot. I believe in November. Mega, correct me if I'm wrong, if you know.
Yeah, like the release of the software upgrade is targeted, is aimed towards first week of November. Once that is implemented by the validators, then yeah, it should be good for the US persons.
That's really exciting. I mean, that just opens up a massive, big market there, and that's pretty cool.
So the validators, as you can see, are the quiet backbone of the dYdX chain, ensuring that traders get to have a smooth experience. And yeah, thank you so much, Eric and Jerome, for joining us. I know, Jerome, for you, it's like 10, 11 p.m. And Eric, it's now 9 a.m. So we had to kind of like figure out how to make this work. It's 4 p.m. for me. Mega, I believe it's 9 p.m. for you. So thank you all for making the time and look forward to more.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Winnie. Thanks, Mega.
Guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Okay, no, let's redo that. Let me think of something. We're gonna include that. We're gonna include that at the end.